Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are cracking open a dense, highly classified 2026 intelligence dossier that reveals a pretty stark new reality. This document suggests that the current US-Iran conflict, well, it isn't actually about achieving peace in the traditional sense at all. It's about mastering global flow control. It's a completely different way to look at geopolitics, and we're going to break down exactly how this new system works.
We've got 5 key areas on the agenda today. First, we'll look at the paradigm shift known as tactical breaks. Then, the physical reality of the military strikes, followed by the hidden targeting of China's energy. After that, we'll explore the deadlocked nuclear negotiations, and finally, wrap up with the permanent global economic fallout. Okay, let's get into it.
Section 1. New Order. Tactical Breaks. Let's dive right into the core thesis here, which totally challenges everything we typically assume about global ceasefires.
Normally, we view a ceasefire as the first step toward resolving a conflict and stabilizing the world order, right? But the reality presented in this dossier is called tactical breaks. This is a strategy designed absolutely not to end a conflict, but to permanently lock in dominance. It's all about keeping an adversary trapped inside a controlled system of economic strangulation. Basically, avoiding both total war and total peace.
The dossier uses this really brilliant metaphor of an industrial valve. Think about it. Instead of blowing up a pipeline or just letting the oil flow freely, you install a valve. You treat a geopolitical conflict exactly like a system of flow control. You keep your adversary right where you want them, strangled just enough to prevent recovery, but not so much that the entire system explodes.
Moving on to Section 2. Destruction. Reality of airstrikes. Because to really understand how this geopolitical valve was installed in the first place, we have to look at the sheer kinetic devastation of the initial military action, which was called Operation Epic Fury.
So, the crucial point here comes down to one number: 85%. In just 38 days of intensive, highly concentrated bombardment, 85% of Iran's naval and missile capabilities were wiped off the map.
This wasn't just a temporary setback, you guys. This was an absolute reduction of denial capability down to zero. By completely neutralizing their high-speed boats, the coastal radars, and their missile command networks, it permanently eliminated their physical ability to forcibly block the Strait of Hormuz. The physical threat was gone, which paved the way for the institutional control that came next.
And mapping out this chaos reveals just how incredibly fast this new world order was locked in. From the start of the bombings on February 28th, it took barely 6 weeks to enforce what the dossier calls a fluid ceasefire by April 8th. And by May 27th, we're looking at a locked-in state of normalization. The sheer speed of this transition from total destruction to a managed standoff is absolutely central to this tactical break strategy.
All right, Section 3. True Target. China Energy Control. Now, what's truly fascinating is the geographic sleight of hand happening here. While the bombs were dropping on the Middle East, the actual structural target of this whole operation was located thousands of miles to the east.
And the foundational metric driving this entire global maneuver? It's 40%.
40% of China's imported crude oil passes right through the Strait of Hormuz. By gaining structural control over this one specific waterway, a geographical necessity is suddenly turned into the ultimate geopolitical weapon. The dossier explicitly describes this as a literal energy hostage situation. It's a way to maintain massive leverage over China's economic engine, but without ever engaging in a direct bilateral conflict.
But how do you manage a chokehold like that without firing more missiles? Well, you create institutions. The dossier highlights the creation of the PGSA, the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. It's an administrative mechanism set up to levy what are essentially completely non-legal tolls on commercial shipping. And the design of the PGSA is honestly kind of genius. Because the military ability to block the strait was destroyed, this authority acts as a political illusion. It allows Iranian hardliners to save face and claim they still have sovereignty over their waters, but in reality, it functions as an administrative tax, paid in Chinese renminbi, that hits China directly in the wallet. It's literal physical destruction, translated perfectly into an administrative bottleneck.
Section 4. Deadlock Negotiation. 20-year trap. With the physical and economic traps now firmly set, let's examine the diplomatic battlefield, the deeply deadlocked nuclear negotiations.
The dossier tracks a really fascinating 4-stage evolution in the diplomacy. It kicked off with Iran making maximum survival demands.
Then, working-level diplomats actually found a middle ground and created a working draft MOU. But that was completely overwritten by a super hardline U.S. stance from the top down. And that override directly resulted in today's bitter, word-by-word deadlock where literally neither side trusts the other. Now you might be wondering, what exactly caused that override? Well, the entire deadlock hinges on a single, brutal technicality. The working draft proposed a 12 to 15-year halt on uranium enrichment. The override demanded 20 years. That 5-year difference? It's not just the number on a page. It's the difference between a temporary pause and total systemic collapse.
The brutal reality of this is captured by the concept of ecosystem decay. See, a 15-year halt allows the current generation of senior scientists to train the next generation before they retire. But the 20-year trap pushes the timeline entirely past the retirement age of the current experts and ensures that the critical unwritten know-how, that tacit knowledge of actually running a nuclear program, is simply not passed down. It causes an irreversible ecosystem decay where the target country literally, physically, and intellectually forgets how to build a nuclear program.
So the result is this perfect zero-trust trap. You have a total clash of negotiation postures. The U.S. demands relief for performance, meaning they want verified results, like the physical export of highly enriched uranium, before releasing a single dollar of frozen assets. But the opposing side, absolutely terrified of looking weak domestically and giving up their leverage for nothing, demands simultaneous execution, an action-for-action guarantee of upfront economic relief. It is an unresolvable stalemate, entirely by design.
Finally, Section 5, Irreversible Global Economic Cost. We have to zoom out for a second and look at the macro fallout. What does this engineered, deadlocked stalemate actually mean for the rest of the world?
The collateral damage is staggering, and it's triggering critical governance red lines. Take Pakistan, for example. The energy starvation caused by the disruption in the strait forced fuel prices to spike to over 450 rupees a liter. This triggered a total governance limit, forcing the entire country into a 4-day workweek and shutting down educational institutions. Their leadership was forced to frantically mediate the ceasefire, not out of some noble desire for world peace, but to literally prevent their own immediate sovereign collapse. The shockwaves for developing nations are devastating. Globally, this new order signifies something even larger: the permanent erosion of UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Commercial shipping companies just want to avoid physical damage to their vessels, so they simply adapt. They begin accepting the non-legal PGSA tolls as just a new, unavoidable cost of doing business. So the core foundation of free maritime navigation, it basically becomes permanently hollowed out.
So, the absolutely crucial point to take away from this entire dossier is this: process control has completely replaced conflict resolution. By keeping conflicts simmering at a manageable boil rather than ever actually ending them, geopolitical risk and friction are now baked directly into the global supply chain. It's a permanent inflation tax on the entire global economy.
Which leaves us with a pretty chilling final thought to consider. If the primary goal of major powers is no longer achieving peace, but rather weaponizing the very flow of global resources to maintain dominance, how does the rest of the world adapt to this distorted new reality? It's a question this dossier suggests will define the next era of global economics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. And remember to always keep questioning the structures around you.